If you're checking out this video, you might be like me, you might be really excited about Warhammer the Old World, the return of essentially Warhammer Fantasy with a new label, perhaps mirroring Horus Heresy with 40k, but make no mistake, it's basically the return of Warhammer Fantasy, or what we used to call it back in the day, which was simply Warhammer. For me, this journey started back in probably about 1996, maybe 97, when I saw one of these pamphlets at a friendly local game store, and I was hooked from there. Acquired this thing right here, Warhammer Armies High Elves, and I've been into the High Elves ever since then. And so, purpose of this video is just, I don't know, I was wondering, what are the High Elves up to? What's been going on with this setting? Obviously, they're like a longer lived race, but nonetheless, I was like, okay, this year is 2276. So I was like, what's been going on lately with the High Elves? And so I did a little bit of research, and I'm sure somebody out there is probably more thorough than me, but I had all the army books from 4th edition through 8th, and so I thought, oh, I'll take a look. So you can see already, going back to the 4th edition book, that this timeline doesn't change a ton over editions. You can see that we're now on this most recent Phoenix King, and 2276 is 113 years into his reign. Finubar, if I'm saying it correctly. So this great chaos incursion has not happened yet. And if you look at, that's the 4th edition book, we go over to 5th edition, and the timeline really is exactly the same as 4th edition. So again, we're 113 years into his reign. And yeah, let's see. I have a couple of other notes here, but I'll come back to those items. So again, if we're talking about sort of some high level things that have happened lately, Finubar reaches Aethel-Loren and rediscovers the Wood Elves. That happened in the prior Phoenix King's reign. Finubar had gone to the old world and kind of reconnected, reestablished contact with those races and the High Elves. And, there's different notes about how they were impressed with what, the humans had become. They reestablished trade with them. But still, there's not a ton to say about Finubar's reign here in the 5th edition book, right? There's nothing else there. I'll note that when we go back in the timeline, around minus 1500 of the Imperial calendar, the last elf army departs from the old world. So this is, after the War of the Beard, which is under the reign of Calidor II. So 4th, 5th edition, not a ton to say. Then I was checking out 6th edition, and this is kind of interesting. This book kind of told more like the history in different stories. It's kind of more just a narrative is how it's laid out. I did think it was kind of interesting. I was looking at this map depicting like the height of High Elven expansion at their height, and I thought it was interesting to see there's a note here that the old world was occupied minus 4110 to minus 2200. And I'll just point out that that's actually kind of inconsistent with 4th and 5th edition. It's a minor note, but again, this is around minus 1500 that the last High Elf army left. So, in other words, they would have had to continue to occupy some of this to be there for the War of the Beard. So, 6th edition, kind of strange on that timeline. So let's go to 7th. 7th, you still don't really have many differences between, all the way from 4th edition through 7th edition. It's really the same kind of activity. And I'll take a couple minutes here and just mention some of the things that are kind of, referred to a lot, with high elf history, or, things that have been in the narrative a lot, are things like, the founding of the colleges of magic, um, Eltharion defeating, well, this is kind of interesting, the first successful raid against Nagorond. And then you have the defeat of Grom, the goblin invasion being defeated. So, those are, there's, paintings of that scene. I think that's on the cover for like the 4th edition box, the introductory box. So it's kind of well known. But again, those are events happening after 2276, after the Old World. Then we've got 8th edition. 8th edition's book is pretty cool. It's actually got, I noticed at first, I was like, oh, okay, it's just the same information, the same timeline, mostly talking about, the Great Chaos Incursion. Sorry, my phone's all over the place here. But there's some really interesting stuff here speaking to the reign of Finubar, and some of it does happen kind of leading up to the year that the Old World is set in. So I thought I'd go over that. So 25 years prior, you have this Battle of Shining Ridge, and so that's essentially it's a battle in Tiranoc where chariots and Illyrian reavers defeat. See if I get this guy's name right. Machinareth Blight Blade. A dark elf invasion is defeated. So that's 25 years prior to the Old World. Then you've got 13 years ago, 13 years prior to the Old World, this event, which is Slaughter at Bleak Meadow, where high elves essentially hear of this beast herd attack on the wood elves, and so they kind of see that as like a diplomatic opportunity to improve relations with the somewhat estranged wood elves. So they send an army to help slaughter this beast herd that was besieging the wood elves. And then getting more recent now, 6 years ago, 6 years prior to the Old World, you have this Mists of Wailing Fen take place. This is basically a daemon host materializes in Yvres. Yvres? Am I saying that right? And basically a bloodthirster is leading them, and it's defeated by a Flamespire Phoenix. After the Phoenix is killed, it is born again and kills the bloodthirster. So that was 6 years ago. So those are some events leading right up to the Old World chronologically. I'll mention this one too. This has not happened yet, but in 5 years from now, because again, the Old World is set in the 113th year of Finubar's reign. In 5 years, you will have Sea Lord Aslan will aid King Gundendrak of Barak Var, and basically they'll repel or destroy a wog that is in the Black Gulf. But then, like, any good high elf dwarven alliance, it's short-lived. They have a falling out after that, and there's some hard feelings, even though they work together temporarily to defeat that orc wog. So, I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool just to look at what the heck has been going on lately with the high elf. I don't know what to call it. The high elf empire, the high elf race, leading up to the Old World's events, And of course, this last one was just shortly thereafter. So again, this is kind of like contemporary what's happening. Obviously, like the High Elven calendar goes back, thousands of years, and they're very long lived. So, I suppose you would take that into account in terms of, like if you're trying to think like, well, what are they thinking about? I don't know. They might be thinking about events more from hundreds or thousands of years prior. But at least, in the last 25 years, you've had some of these things happen in the 8th edition version of the High Elven chronology. In some of the other versions, prior editions, if you go all the way back to 4th, you will see there's really nothing said, right? So, anyway, I hope you got something out of this. For me, it was just kind of a little bit of a trip down memory lane. Kind of fun to think back about, getting started or thinking about when I got started, and just, excited about seeing what these new books look like, and excited about playing some games again. So hope you enjoyed.